So there's a new Scream movie around the corner, or it's already out depending on whenever I release this video. And honestly, at the time, I can't really say I'm looking forward to it. Because as of right now, without even seeing a single leak about it, I can tell you almost exactly how it's going to go down. They'll introduce some boring new one-note characters with lame performances that are really forgettable, and then they'll kill off pretty much none of the essential cast members, although they'll throw a few fake out deaths in your face to make it seem like there's going to be a little bit of stakes this time, all while having some really over-the-top, extremely corny dialogue and meta commentary that just feels way too in your face and unnaturally spoken, and nothing about the status quo of the franchise will really be changed, and then they'll do the same thing in a few years with another installment again and again and again. Now, how do I know all that, you may ask? Well, no, it's not because I've suddenly become Raven Simone. It's simply just because I've played these games before. And what I mean by that is I've just seen the other Scream movies. Now, I know there's already a lot of negative reception behind Scream 7, mainly due to all of the stuff going on behind the scenes involving its former lead actress. I want to say that I 100% fully support her stance, and my hatred for this movie and the reason why I'm not really looking forward to it has nothing to do with what's going on. And I think her being fired was a larger issue about Hollywood and corporations in general that I can't go too deep into before they silence me and they start calling me crazy. But the main thing that drove me into making this video and coming out of retirement is the criticism that I've seen online regarding this movie. Now, regardless of the controversy behind it, a lot of people have been saying things about the trailer and criticizing it, saying this is too formulaic, or this is a crash grab, or nostalgia pandering, or lacking originality, or having a terrible cast. And these are all very valid criticisms. I mean, I watched the trailer and thought all these same things. But then I realized that like almost everything you can say about this trailer can be applied to literally every Scream movie after maybe like Scream 2. A lot of these criticisms feel like they're automatically more biased towards this movie, primarily because of the stuff that happened behind the scenes. And you know, I'm not really here to persuade people. If that's how you view films and those are the reasons why you don't really want to watch this movie, I can't really change your opinion. However, I feel like people need to take their nostalgia glasses off, or their nostalgia mask, and unlike the killers in the movie, need to realize that, hey, just because the original movie is that good, we don't have to lie to ourselves and act like the sequels are all that great too. Because for a while, I've just kind of started to fall out of love for these movies. I mean, I've always been a really big Scream fan at heart, but over the years, I've started to realize as I rewatch these movies, I'm really a Scream 1996 fan rather than a Scream, the franchise Scream fan. I've watched the original like more times than I could count, and a lot of my love for this franchise really all stems from my love for the original, and I think the creators of the movie kind of realized that a lot of the fans feel the same way, and that's why the sequels, you see them really start to pander towards the original movie and referencing the original, then referencing, I don't know, the random news van guy from Scream 2. But at last, we're already here and the intro has gone on a bit too long, so we're going to break down these movies one by one and really see how these movies have slowly fallen from grace and pinpoint the exact moment where that happened. And spoiler alert, it's not going to be really that hard to find. Now, of course, let's start with the original.
Wow, well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
Now, this section will be a bit more brief compared to the others because despite how negative the title is and how negative the rest of the video is going to be from this point, I do want to make it crystal clear that I do really like this franchise. I don't like to be negative. And the reason why I like this franchise is because of this movie right here. Now, we've all heard the praises of this movie about 1,000,000 times by now. Yes, this movie's score and soundtrack is amazing, specifically this score. And yes, this movie's opening scene is absolutely brilliant. And there's a reason why horror movies, even later Scream movies, have been constantly trying to capture the magic of this scene. The bait and switch of casting Drew Barrymore and marking her as the lead only to instantly kill her off. The slow build-up and rising tension with the popcorn overcooking, later causing fire to the house. The scary movie trivia trick question scene and the I want to know who I'm looking at. And just a soothing but also frightening Ghostface voice in general that sounds so naturally charming compared to later movies down the line. But we're not going to talk about those right now. All leading up to the brutal reveal of Casey Becker's corpse hung on a tree. I mean, every time I rewatch this movie, this scene always I know it's gonna come. And I will stand by this. I think this is the greatest scene in the entire franchise. But there's also so many great other iconic moments throughout. Obviously, the attack on Sydney's house does a good job of manipulating the audience. I really like Randy's scene explaining horror movie rules. The van scene, even after I rewatched this movie so many times, I still get goosebumps at this scene in particular. I really like when Tatum says, "Bam, bitch went down." That line delivery always gets me for some reason. And that's something I always really liked about this movie because despite what the later movies might suggest, I really like the dialogue in this movie. It doesn't feel too corny and on the nose, and even though we talk about how 90s movies are also corny, which I strongly disagree with, but that's not the point. There's so many great one-liners in this movie that should come off as over the top and corny, but they really work effectively, and the actors are really good at delivering them in a way that just feels kind of badass in a way. Specifically, Sydney's final line when she says,
"Not in my movie."
which the other movies try to give her another iconic one-liner, but it really just doesn't come off the same as that one. The characters in this movie in general are all pretty great. In a movie that should feel pretty tropey with how its characters are written, the cast is really good and the characters have a lot of personality and they subvert a lot of typical tropes. Particularly Dewey, for example. Typically in horror movies, cops are in a way where they don't really know what's going on and aren't really taken seriously and are just killed off. But Dewey is actually pretty effective in this movie and plays a pretty big role. So much so that a lot of people, when they first watch this movie, their natural instinct is to think that Dewey might be the killer. And you can really watch this movie and think that any of these characters could be the killer, and that's what makes it so charming and fun to watch. It really does feel like a murder mystery at times, and there are times where I've rewatched this movie with other people and they've all had different guesses of who the killer might be. A lot of people think that Gail's journalistic instinct and her obsession with Sydney's past, particularly writing stories about her mother, makes her an obvious suspect for the killer. Some people think that Randy and him being way too versed on horror movies makes him an obvious suspect. Some people think that Tatum and her obliviousness to everything and her being too close to Sydney makes her obvious suspect for the killer, or even the principal in this over-the-top but also really funny scene. But the thing that makes Billy such a great reveal when it's finally revealed that he is the killer is because they make him so overly suspicious in the beginning and throw an obvious red herring that makes it seem like, oh, he obviously can't be the killer. But the reveal that there's two killers, that they're both involved, is what really sells it. And every time I rewatch this movie, the killer reveal scene is still one of the best. Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich really sell this scene, and it really irritates me how almost every single movie after this forgets what made this reveal so special in the first place. Both of these characters do have something kind of off about them from the beginning, and there's clues throughout the movies that both of them might be the killer, but we never suspect it because it's unusual for a slasher movie to have two killers. And their psychopathic nature and them over-explaining everything really works because this time in the story it doesn't feel out of character for either of them because both are subtly foreshadowed to not all be there mentally. And this scene is further implementing the fact that these are two strands of mentally ill people confusing fantasy for reality. It doesn't feel like you're watching an over-the-top, completely different character like it does in some of the later movies, but again, we'll get to those eventually. I mean, I could talk about how great this movie is for hours, but unfortunately, that's not why you clicked on the video. And yeah, it really all goes downhill from here. But Scream 1 still remains an easy 10 out of 10, and this is barely scratching the surface of the many things that works about this movie. And this will forever remain one of my all-time favorite movies. Anyways, let's go into the rest of them. Now, I don't really hate Scream 2, nor would I say it's a bad movie like some of the others, but honestly, it's kind of worse in that regard. That's the most boring sequel. Before they had a really clear cookie-cutter based formula for how these movies would play out, Scream 2 kind of experiments a bit more, but builds out the previous movie. The opening scene here is way more longer and drawn out and doesn't involve a phone call unlike the other 5 movies do, but I think it is a fun scene even if it does go on a bit too long. And yeah, by the end of it, the whole death in the movie theater lining up with the one in the movie just feels a bit more over the top and not effective as the final kill reveal at the end of the first movie's opening scene. This movie takes place outside of Woodsboro and follows Sydney in college and somewhere I don't remember where the college is said, nor does it really matter too much because it's just somewhere college. I think it's interesting to see a horror movie take place in college as opposed to the high school setting we're so used to. And yeah, I don't really know. I like the frat bro proposal scene. Ghostface killing a sorority girl. That scene was kind of funny. Also, most of the main characters from the first movie that survived come back. And yeah, they're not really as fun as they were in the last movie. Randy is just kind of here, I guess, and his death is way too over the top and kind of cartoonishly bad. And it really doesn't seem like the movie wanted to bring him back, but too many people liked him. Dewey also returns, and so does Gail, and it's mentioned that Gail is still kind of asshole and wrote a book about the whole situation, and so she's still pretty much on Sydney's bad side. There's also a lot more focus on her and Dewey's relationship, which I'm gonna be real, I really never cared for, like, at all. Who also just has really bad pacing of the series and honestly feels way too slow in parts, and it feels like the least amount of things happen in this movie compared to all the others. The murder mystery aspect just feels way less crucial than it was in the first movie, and it just really switches from, oh, we have to do this to solve the killer thing, and I don't know. I kind of forgot what the central goal of it was at the time. The standout moment of this movie is easily the theater scene, which I think is so exploit tense and suspenseful, even though once it's over, you start to realize something, unfortunately, which is pretty much all the characters named Sydney, Gale, and Dewey, for the most part, are invincible throughout this franchise and will survive pretty much any dramatic injury or encounter they face. I also forgot to mention that there's new characters because the movie doesn't really put too much emphasis on them. Sydney has a new roommate this time around named Nott Tatum, who has one of the stupidest death scenes in the franchise. Like, literally, what reason does she have to go back there and unmask him? You could have just fucking done that when you were in the car. And why does she just stand there and watch her die and not even scream or run or do anything? Also, something you'll start to realize later on as the movies go on, Ghostface is kind of a clumsy little bitch. Like, seriously, how am I supposed to take this guy as a threat seriously if he gets knocked out in a car crash and somehow comes out of it unscathed and the characters don't do anything about it? Like, they don't even try to just, I don't know, suffocate him or, like, I don't know, stab him with something or just fucking anything. You can't just leave him there and then come back and try to unmask him later. Like, no, it's too fucking late for that. As for the meta aspect of this movie, this story addresses the concept of sequels and how they're never better than the original, which I would disagree in most cases, but I guess the creators took this idea to heart when they made this film so much worse than the first movie. On the whole argument that Empire Strikes Back doesn't count because it's part of a planned trilogy is such bullshit, but whatever. I do really like how this film does address an issue that is still talked about today, which is the fact that entertainment doesn't really create violence in the simple way that we think it does. I do think the way that this movie addresses the fourth wall break setup is still pretty solid and feels natural given that it's a film class, but this will be the last time that it feels natural in the rest of the series. This movie also notably introduces the Stab series, which is going to become the base of the franchise later on as a jumping off point just to say, this happened in Scream 2. Just instead of saying Scream, they'll say Stab, so it's not directly breaking the fourth wall, but it'll also become very annoying. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We will address you later. The way they try to connect this movie to the first one this time is by saying that the killer is doing a real life sequel and that in the order of the initials of the people that killed match the initials of the people that the first one, I don't really know. This movie's logic is kind of bullshit, but whatever. This movie also does address a bit more of the race issue regarding horror movies and the lack of diversity that was in the first Scream movie. Gale's new friend with the news van was actually pretty funny, and I like that after he realized all the crazy shit that happens, he just makes a smart decision that no one else makes and just fucking leaves. But as I say that, I realize that they're probably going to bring him back in like Scream fucking 12. I don't even know. And yeah, the reveal itself that Billy's mother just feels like kind of a stretch and more of a lame take on Friday the 13th. I mean, I guess the first movie didn't really exactly address what happened to Billy's mother after the whole affair thing that happened with Sydney's mom. So I guess this is their way of filling that plot hole that really didn't need to be filled. Also, it doesn't really work because, correct me if I'm wrong, but his mom isn't really in the film all that much. And I know for a fact her name wasn't Miss Loomis at all. So it just kind of feels like the film is just tricking you, and it just makes the killer reveal feel way less satisfying because I don't really care about this character the way I cared about Billy and Stu in the first movie. But speaking of characters not in the movie, the second killer reveal being Mickey was honestly so dumb. As technically he's the first killer to be revealed, but whatever. Seriously, I think Mickey was in maybe 3 scenes throughout the entire movie, and I don't really think that's a stretch. They really try to make you think that Sydney's boyfriend's going to be the killer, but I think the creators knew that they had a bit more originality than to repeat that over again. Right? Okay, I swear I will talk about Scream 5 later. I think the idea of him being a serial killer is pretty interesting and could have went in some interesting directions about him wanting the fame for being a famous serial killer and wanting to be caught and all that, but then he just gets shot. Yeah, and this movie's climax is nowhere near as entertaining as the first movie's was, and by the time we got to the end of it, I was just ready for it to be over. Also, this movie doesn't fake out with the final, that's always fun shot. One last scare. It just ends with Sydney walking and the music plays and the credits start rolling, and I don't know, man. What are we even doing here? So yeah, Scream 2, while definitely not a bad movie, coming right off the cusp of the first movie, it's just such a massive downgrade that honestly, it just makes it stick out compared to the rest of the series. Like, I don't know, if I was alive in 1997 and I was in the audience for this movie, I think I'd be pretty pissed. But at last, we still have 4 more movies to cover, and oh my god, it gets so much more worse than this.
Who's calling it?
Oh boy, what a trip this movie is. First of all, I guess I'll start by mentioning the character Cotton Weary. He's not super important in the first 2 movies, but he does show up in the last one, and he's pretty much just a guy who got accused of killing Sydney's mom and kind of started all of this in the first place. Anyway, so he gets killed off in like the opening scene of this movie. There's a bit of a twist this time. The killer is using some sort of AI mimicking technology that I guess existed in 2000. And this ability is so incredibly dumb and goofy that of course it will never be used in another Scream movie. This opening scene is way too overly drawn out and goofy and really hard to take seriously, and it's really not scary or interesting at all, and really it's just kind of dumb. This is a common thing you'll see throughout the entire movie. The movie has a really bad reputation with the Scream movie fans and is heavily regarded as the worst movie in the franchise, and I can definitely see why, and I would agree with you if it was still the year 2021. Scream 3 follows Sydney, who's now living in LA, a place where people often go if they don't want to be off the grid and away from crazy people. But I guess the movie shows that she more so lives on top of a mountain and has a dog and a security system, so she pretty much isolates herself from the rest of the world and for the movie itself because she is not in this movie a whole lot. Apparently Neve Campbell had another movie that she was filming at the time, which I really don't understand because she's kind of a one-trick pony and I can't think of another movie she's been in besides the Scream franchise, but that's another story. Anyways, this movie is heavily centered on the Stab franchise itself and follows the studio making a third Stab movie, this time one that's not inspired by true events and that returns to Woodsboro, more specifically the Stu Macher house. The movie itself acknowledges how much of a lame cash grab idea this is and how Hollywood is clearly out of ideas, so hopefully in real life they won't try to actually do this. This movie's main meta commentary is about trilogies, more specifically how to end one and wrap up stories, things that we really don't know anything about in 2026. This movie is easily the worst of the Wes Craven films, and it's really not even close. The whole voice changer thing, like I mentioned, is very stupid and just leads to so many scenes that are just directly deceptive to the audience in a way. The movie being set in Hollywood in the middle of making a movie could have made a really interesting concept, but all it just leads to a bunch of really boring fourth wall breaks and meta commentary that at this point just feels overly on the nose, and this should have been the sign that they needed to wrap this up because this whole gimmick was starting to lose all of its steam.
Oh, it's steam.
Like, there's a difference between watching a horror movie nerd sit on this couch and tell a character, look behind you, and then in real life he's actually being attacked by a killer behind him. But making a movie within a movie based on the events that killers did that were based on a movie and making jokes about movies and horror movies, it's just like, okay, we get it, the fourth wall is being broken. We are talking about real movies while we are in a movie. It's just, I'm really tired of it and no one really cares about this anymore. Oh, and speaking of Randy, he also returns to this movie in the form of a video to explain the rules of finishing a trilogy because I guess he predicted that this would happen a third time, and that's more specifically he wasn't gonna make it and that he would die. I mean, sure, whatever. Hey, remember when this guy was just a funny virgin dude who worked at a video store and wasn't just the Mr. Meta Explanation guy who explains a rule every single movie? And yeah, I know he's not technically in the next 3 movies, but they definitely make sure to have new characters exactly mimic his style. I do find it interesting how back in 1997 the Scream 2 script did actually leak and they had to rewrite the movie. There's a lot of jokes about that in Scream 3, more specifically the director not finishing the script for the movie while they're shooting it. The action scenes unfortunately are really boring this time around. There is one pretty memorable action scene, but it's not for the right reasons. Like seriously, this scene is so laughably bad it makes me laugh almost every time I think about it. So basically there's one guy who gets attacked by Ghostface and gets stabbed in the back with a frying pan, but he somehow survives long enough to dramatically walk out and reveal his death to the other characters. Then the power goes out and Ghostface, I kid you not, starts faxing the script of the movie somehow to another fax machine in the house, describing what's about to happen in the next scene. So obviously anyone with reasonable brain cells would think, okay, just ignore the fax machine and just get out the house, right? right? Well, actually, that is what they do at first, until one guy decides to go back in because he just really has to see what's going to happen in the script next. And instead of using the flashlight or going outside into the light so he can read the script, he decides to ignite a lighter that sets off leaking gas, which the script mentions, and that blows up the whole fucking house. And look, I know if survivors and victims made dark decisions in horror movies, then we wouldn't have horror movies in the first place, and that's something Scream already makes fun of, but like, could the characters not be any more dumber in this scene? There was literally no reason for him to go back inside the house, but they just really need this over-the-top dramatic death scene because everything is bigger in the last part of the trilogy. As for the killer's motivation in this movie, you guessed it, it all goes back to Sydney once again. This time, specifically her mother's backstory and the killer's leaving photos of Maureen Prescott each crime scene, hinting that the killer may have tied to Sydney's past yet again. Other than Gail having an awful haircut, she and Dewey just really don't do anything interesting in this movie. I'm pretty sure they're broken up for most of the movie, but I really don't care about their relationship, and it's really grown stale at this point. Now, you might have noticed that I haven't talked about any of the new characters yet, and that's because there's really not a lot to say about most of them. Most of them are just supporting cast members that are in Stab 3. I guess Sydney has a new love interest that they also want to make you think is the killer, which marks the second time that we have another love interest that's a red herring but doesn't end up being the killer this time. Also, Gail's stunt double, or her character in the movie, is also kind of involved a bit. They do have a few fun scenes together, and even Carrie Fisher gets to make a cameo, but yeah, ultimately the new cast of this movie is really underwhelming. Also, while the movie is full wall-to-wall with meta jokes, I think the Carrie Fisher joke
I've been hearing it all my life.
You look just like her. Playing herself. Towards the climax, there's another really goofy scene where Gail and Dewey start tumbling down the stairs with Ghostface, and you know, Dewey, instead of being useful and actually having a loaded gun and easily having a way to shoot him, but yeah, the gun doesn't end up working, and Ghostface decides to throw his knife at Dewey, but then the knife doesn't stab him, it hits him with the back of the knife. Like, why do these main three characters have so much hot armor in these movies? Why are they allergic to giving them any sort of lasting injuries or consequences, or just having the guts just to kill them off? Well, at least for now. As for Ghostface himself, I guess it's time that we talk about the killer reveal because, oh my god, it's so fucking dumb. I guess I never mentioned the character of Rowan Bridger because, I don't know, he's not really all that interesting throughout the movie. He's just the director of Stab 3, which automatically makes him a easy suspect that most people watch. And also, he, like, dies, or at least has a fake out death 10 minutes before his big reveal scene, and Gail even goes as far to check his pulse, but I guess he just didn't die. Anyways, after holding Gail and Dewey hostage and luring Sydney in, he finally reveals to Sydney, Sydney, who he really is. Not just the movie director, but also Sydney's brother.
And brother.
Oh, I guess half-brother, technically. So as we already know, Maureen Prescott was kind of a whore, but this time she was raped, and Roman Bridger over here is a rape baby. And since Maureen didn't want to be involved in his life, Roman decided to get revenge and not kill her, but stalk her and record her all around. And okay, basically they retcon it since revealing that he was the one who gave Billy the idea to kill Maureen Prescott. Look, I don't mind retcons sometimes when it enhances the story and, you know, actually somewhat makes sense, but this doesn't really do either. I know they really wanted to find a way to make the whole story tie together like it was all planned out, with this being planned to be the last of the trilogy, but this felt like such a really shitty way to do it. It already kind of ruins the first movie because the thing that worked so great about that reveal is because we were supposed to be led to believe that Billy and Stu planned all of this maliciously themselves, and not only does having Roman be involved kind of ruin that, but also Sydney doesn't really care that much, or this whole reveal that's just so over the top and retconny doesn't really change that much about the status quo of the story going forward, but even in this movie right now. And also, Sydney has never interacted with Roman up until this point. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while since I rewatched this movie, but I don't recall them ever having a scene together before this big reveal. So not only having it re-revealed that he's the killer already makes it kind of weird since these two characters have never been on screen together, but that's supposed to be her brother, and they have like, I don't know, no sort of relationship with each other prior. It just feels like too many twists being thrown on us at once. Like, I just imagine that when Roman takes off his mask initially and starts explaining how this is all his big plan and this is one big movie, she's just confused, like, okay, who the fuck is this and why should she believe him or take any of this seriously? Even if Scream 2's killers were kind of lame in my opinion, I feel like this is much worse because at least Sydney had interactions with both of those characters before, even if they were little. Sydney has zero interaction with Roman throughout the whole movie, so this reveal scene just, like I said, feels more for the audience rather than for Sydney herself, and she's not really changed by this experience, and just, I don't know, I don't really care about this. Scream 3 just doesn't have anything all that iconic about it or anything memorable about its premise or story or locations. It doesn't even have anything new to really offer the series. At its core, it's just a slightly retweaked version of Billy's motivations that also retcons that story at the same time. Anyways, after the overly long scene of the killer explaining everything to the audience, Sydney, Gale, and Dewey eventually overpower Roman, who I guess somehow orchestrated all of this by himself without a partner, but for some reason gets overpowered by the three of them in the climax because, I don't know, it just needs to happen in the fucking movie, I guess. And we get what is debatably one of the worst one-liners in this franchise.
I still got to make my movie.
And yeah, this movie's actual ending, especially since it was hyped up as the end of the trilogy, is just really unsatisfying and ends with the shot of an open door, I guess signifying that Sydney finally gets her happy ending and doesn't have to be paranoid about people trying to kill her anymore. If only that were the truth. Like 4 fucking movies left to go. Anyways, this movie sucks. I don't really know what else to say. It's terrible, and I can see why everyone trashes on it. Let's just keep going.
Just one click away, click away.
Okay, first of all, let me get this out the way because everyone that's seen this movie has said this about 1,000,000 times. But yeah, this movie has this really weird pace filter over it, and I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, obviously, when watching you eventually get used to it, but it really makes this movie stick out compared to the other movies, especially when you're watching them all back to back. I guess it's to make this movie have a more retro vibe to it. I don't know, maybe it's a stylistic choice, maybe it was a budget issue, who cares. Anyways, this movie is set about 10 years after the last movie, both in universe and in real life, and it makes explicit notice of how modern it is, or I guess in 2026 this movie would be considered more retro. Really fast. Like seriously, I remember seeing this movie in theaters and Scream 4 does have a pretty interesting opening scene in concept where they show that in universe that they've made up to 7 sad movies and audiences are kind of over it and it seems like they're running out of ideas. Boy, I sure hope this doesn't happen in real life. But even the Stab franchise sounds like it's more interesting than the real life Scream franchise. I mean, apparently they have time travel in those movies. I mean, fuck, I want to see a Scream Back to the Future movie. Also, keep this in mind for later, but apparently according to the in-movie universe, the Stab movies after 3 stopped being about Sydney because she threatened to sue the studio. Again, keep this in mind later because it will not be consistent. This opening tricks the audience by making us think that we're seeing the first kill right away, only for it to be revealed to be a clip from Stab 6. But then later the opening Stab 6 is actually a movie within the universe of Stab 7. And then we actually see the real Scream 4, which I guess means that Stab 6 is the same as Stab 6. I don't even fucking care. I don't even want to get into all that. Even the movie kind of makes fun of how dumb this is, and I don't really care that much about it because there's going to be a lot of more dumb shit for me to complain about in this movie that actually affects the plot. And the thing is, the actual opening kill after all the build-up is kind of underwhelming compared to the previous 2 fake-out ones. I mean, I guess they utilize the idea of texting more and 2 people get killed off instead of 1, but now I realize they already kind of do that in Scream 2 and, well, Scream 1, for example. I guess what I mean is that 2 people are both in the house at the same time and both interact on the phone, if that makes sense. Look, I'm grasping at straws here. I'm trying to give this movie some credit where credit is due. Anyways, this movie, like Stab 3, returns to Woodsboro. Not just Woodsboro the town, but Woodsboro High, and tries to bring some of that teen slasher movie high school energy that the first movie had. Because who doesn't love being reminded of the first Scream movie? I mean, guys, don't you love the movie Scream from 1996? Like, I don't know if you've heard it, but if you haven't, don't worry, because these movies will remind you how great that movie was. The new characters introduced in this movie are actually a big improvement over the ones in 2 and 3, and what I mean is that I just remembers more of the characters' names. Sydney's little cousin Jill is introduced, as well as her friend Kirby, and yeah, I forgot the other one's name. And also there's these film nerd dudes, Charlie, and yeah, once again, I forgot the other one's name. I think that one was Trevor. I'm also just trying to take script notes right now. Look, cut me a bit of slack. These movies have like 40 fucking characters and almost none of them are interesting enough for me to remember, so I'm really trying here, guys. The original trio is back. Gail and Dewey are now married, and I'm pretty sure Gail is receiving writer's block, or more specifically, she's jealous of Sydney because she's the one receiving all the fame with her book tour and all that. And Dewey, for some reason, decided to go back to being cop in Woodsboro, even after all the crazy shit that happened there. There's also this new cop lady who's really obsessed with Dewey and really wants him to try her lemon squares.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
I don't know, she's a really weird character actually. She and Sydney apparently went to high school together, and she has this really weird scene where she's standing in the dark just talking about how jealous of Sydney she is. I guess they wanted you to think that she would be the killer, but honestly, I really didn't expect her at all, but I was just more so weirded out by her character. I swear, Sydney just needs to stop talking to everyone in general at this point because it feels like she will forever have somebody gunning for her. Anyways, this movie's meta commentary is centered around reboots, which would make sense since reboots were becoming more of a common trend in the late 2000s. But it kind of falls apart once you realize that this movie isn't really a reboot, at least by simple definition of the word. Because thanks to Scream's 5 vocabulary, we can classify this movie as more of a requel instead of a reboot because it continues the same story and has the same continuity and characters from the original movie while also having new ones, but the new ones aren't entirely replacing the original ones from the first movie. I don't know, it's a little bit hard to explain. We'll talk about more on Scream 5. But basically the killer's goal this time around is that they want to make a quote-unquote reboot of the original movie, and apparently the kills are supposed to parallel those of the ones killed in the first movie. Look, what they really meant is that the characters wanted to remind you how great the original Scream movie once is so that the audience would hopefully forget how terrible Scream 3 was 10 years ago. Although this movie feels like it's more so of an apology for both of those sequels in general, because it feels more like a sequel to the first movie rather than a sequel to Scream 2 and 3. There's like very minimum references to the other two movies other than just the existence of the Sad movie franchise. But what this movie is really about is internet fame, and more specifically the lengths that people will go to receive clout on the internet. Because in 2011, even today, what you do on the internet is your legacy and how you will forever be immortalized. And I think this concept in isolation is an interesting idea and kind of builds off of what Mickey was trying to go for in the second movie. But like I said, in isolation, this idea works, but its execution, we'll get into that a little bit later. Also, Anthony Anderson in this movie, and yeah, this is more so of a side tangent, but somehow in even the most smallest roles he's been in, he somehow manages to be the most annoying part of the movie. And he's pretty annoying in this movie. He's extremely unfunny and even has a pretty annoying death scene. Like, how do you manage to make me hate a scene where an actor I absolutely despise dies? And by the way, this isn't really a dig on him as a person. I have no idea what he's like in real life, but this is more so of a dig on how much I despise his character in Blackish. Like, seriously, his character alone made it hard for me to watch the show. Also, that show is one of the few times where the spin-off show actually manages to be significantly better than the main one, but we're talking about something completely different. Okay, back to Scream. As for the kills in this movie, I guess they're alright. I mean, I like the scene in the parking lot where the lady has to find her car, and the most gruesome kill in the movie with the intestines everywhere that I'm not sure I can show on YouTube still shocks me almost every single time I rewatch this movie. Like, seriously, it has to be one of the most gruesome things in the whole franchise, in fact. Also, I'm really surprised that in universe that the Stab movie franchise would even be allowed to go on this long. I mean, I know in real life we had the Texas Chainsaw movies and the Jeffrey Dahmer show, but this wasn't just one isolated incident. This was 3 separate occasions where someone put on the Ghostface mask and killed people. And the third time that this happened, it was the director of one of the Stab movies. And judging how this isn't going to be the last time that this happens in universe, and even more the specific motivations of some of the killers later down the line, I just feel like this would be a bigger, more talked about deal in the universe. I mean, in real life, we have rappers who died years ago in Call of Duty being blamed for actual violence. But you know, in this fictional movie world, the movies based on real serial killers and real incidents that have proof of dangerous effects on this crazy cult fan base, like, there wouldn't be more discussion around it, and the studios wouldn't for once think, hey, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't be making more of these movies. I don't know, I'm surprised that people haven't tried to make the Stab movie franchise just illegal in general. Also, I feel like this movie really overdoes the references to other horror movies. I know that Scream even directly mentions and references other horror movies, but I feel like it did it a bit more tamely than this movie does.
Back to the original!
Are you telling me that?
Spewing references. I mean, yeah, I know the context of this scene, but come on, like, this has to be the most glaringly obvious example of this issue. Oh yeah, and Kirby gets stabbed like 30 seconds after this scene, and it's very much implied that she died here, and she's never mentioned again. Keep this in mind for later. Anyways, I guess we should talk about the actual killer, because man, there really is a lot to unpack with this one. Now, first of all, the killer being Sydney's cousin was pretty obvious once they introduced that she was Sydney's cousin, because we literally just a family member was a killer. So once they automatically introduce a new family member, my mind is instantly going to be, okay, this character has to be important. Otherwise, they wouldn't make explicit mention of her being related to Sydney. And these movies are just everybody hates Sidney Prescott at this point, so I'm not really surprised. But what's more interesting about Jill's motivation, other than her being Sydney's cousin, is more specifically that she's jealous that Sydney gained so much fame from being a victim of the whole Ghostface Chronicles, and she wants to cash in on some of that fame. Now, like most things in the Scream sequels, I think this idea as a concept is pretty good, but if you haven't guessed the theme here, the execution is really weak, and that's putting it lightly. First of all, Jill is like almost
today, wasn't
a
I?
different character in this movie than she was in the rest of the movie, and her performance is really over the top. And yes, I know you want to say, well, Billy and Stu were like that in the original movie, and no, because like I mentioned in that movie section, Billy and Stu were shown to be a little weird from the start. Their personalities remained consistent throughout, but just elevated a little bit in the climax once we find out that not only are they a little weird, but they're also both serial killers. Oh, and Charlie, the film nerd incel dude, was the other killer, and he was the brains behind the operation, and the whole movie he's recording it all to post online, which is foreshadowed early in the movie by him constantly recording and live streaming everything. They plan to pin this whole thing on Jill's boyfriend, Trevor, and Jill even shoots him in the dick just for good measure. They even say it themselves that they want to be the new Billy and Stu and do just in case you don't get it, they literally say it out loud. But then Jill kills Charlie anyways because she wants to be a solo survivor, because that's more woke, I guess. But then Jill, instead of making sure Sydney was dead after telling everything about her plan, she really spends way too long trying to harm herself. Like, seriously, I'm pretty sure this scene goes on for like 4 minutes. And this scene just is so overly goofy, and it just feels like a parody at this point. I was really wondering while watching this movie why this scene was as long as it is. And every time I rewatch this movie, it really slows the pacing down. But once I finally learned a pretty big detail about this movie behind the scenes, it all started to make sense, and it really makes sense why this reveal in the climax later on is just so unsatisfying and straight up dumb. Anyways, Jill gets rushed to the hospital, and we start to see reporters surrounding her, showing that she's getting at least a little bit of fame after all. Dewey meets her by her hospital bed and reveals that Sydney's okay, much to Jill's disliking. Wait, hold on a minute. You mean to tell me that Jill's plan the entire time was to kill Sydney? Like, she didn't want Sydney alive perfectly, and harms herself and even pulls out a bit of her hair to make it all look super realistic, but she couldn't just have stabbed Sydney a few extra times to make sure that she was really dead? I mean, take it from someone who's never killed someone before. It's really not that hard to make sure someone's dead, especially when they're already unconscious. And the thing is, Sydney being alive in the first place and knowing everything wouldn't really matter if she didn't know anything, because Jill shouldn't have told her every single beat of her plan. Seriously, what is it with these corny theater kid monologues that these movies do? I'm really tired of it. We don't need to have the killers explain every single bit of their motivation to the characters, because not only does it make no sense in the context of the story, but it really messes with the pacing, and the performances are not that good. And no, the fact that this was done in the first movie doesn't matter, because the first movie not only should have been its own isolated thing, but like I've said a million times by now, it made sense and the performances were good and the dialogue wasn't so corny. But somehow Jill becomes plot armor of the character and somehow not only beats up Dewey, but disarms him and takes down both Gale and the other cop lady. Look, I can buy the silly nature that the killer wearing the Ghostface costume automatically makes him taller and more invincible. Sure, that's fine, whatever, but this 5'2" girl should not have easily disarmed 4 experienced survivors, including 2 cops. Like, why is everyone so clumsy in this scene? It really irritates me. But Jill tries to kill Gale, but then Sydney sneaks up and fries Jill's brains, and then she's dead. But anyway, she's not really dead because they need one last jump scare, and I guess Sydney needs to deliver another one-liner that really doesn't hit. The reason why this reveal and the climax and just all of it revolving around Jill was so sloppy in the first place is because originally the plan for this movie was that Jill would actually win and get away with it, and that Scream 5 and 6 would continue her story later down the line, and this whole climax in that empty hospital ends up being more so of a reshoot, apparently. Also, what is it with horror movies, specifically slasher movies, always having empty hospitals? Like, you mean to tell me 2 victims were brutally stabbed in their house and no security and no doctors are around? This isn't even the last time this has happened specifically in Woodsboro. Like, seriously, did all the doctors in this town go on strike? The town of Woodsboro actually felt lived in and had some personality and a lot of extras in the first movie, and it's really lacking that in Scream 4 and 5. Anyways, because of that anticlimactic last-minute reshoot climax, we end on this really unsatisfying note of Jill, I guess, receiving the fame that she wanted, but we just zoom in on her dead corpse and the movie ends. And sadly, this ended up being Wes Craven's last Scream movie because he ended up passing away from cancer in 2015. He had actually planned for this movie to be a jumping off point for another Scream 5 and 6, and thank goodness that this movie didn't end on a cliffhanger and didn't become the part 1 that it really felt like it was, because this movie really bombed at the box office and there weren't any more Scream movies for 11 years.
In fact, the only surefire way to survive a modern horror movie, you pretty much have to be gay.
You gonna look okay? Oh my god, we all survived!
Yes, Scream 5, I guess just Scream again. Yeah, I know, reboot, whatever, it has the same title, so but making fun of yourself doesn't make it any less dumb when you're just shooting yourself in the foot and laughing at all of it. Anyways, as you can probably tell, how much I absolutely despise this film. Honestly, I've been wanting to talk about it for quite some time, but it's probably going to end up being like a 6-hour review, so it's probably good to seriously, I don't think honestly this guy how disappointed I was not being out of this movie when I first saw the theater. And honestly, I could have waited. There's so many things I didn't even expect to get into. So the evidence in this movie introduced us in around 2 million dollars. Thank goodness they decided to kill her in the opening scene, because what a waste of another one to fall into. Oh, and we'll talk about this in the yeah, I get it, maybe you want to be on whatever, but elevator 4 isn't a real thing. Seriously, based off of the description of what elevator 4 means to her, it literally makes no sense, because horror movies already have themes and going with inside and time and wall-to-wall jump scares. I mean, the movie you mentioned a few scenes later on literally has jump scares in it.
Be about ready.
If you can't make your sit up, it makes no fucking sense. But whatever, we have some emotions. Anyway, she's texting her friend Amber on the phone, but turns out it's not really Amber, it's Ghostface, and he's texting her, just like in Stab 7. And Ghostface threatens to kill Amber, and she answers her scary movie trivia. And yeah, I'm pretty much saying her right now. Anyway, she takes the break up and I mean, the whole phone nonsense is makes it our sense. And when we get to this movie later on, we get to this pretty much nailed down you said save yourself. Anyway, Sarah gets asked about the sad movie. Eventually, she ends up just Googling answers, which I found pretty funny. And then Ghostface gets into her house, stabbing her for 20 times, because crawling on the floor, soaked in blood, gets stabbed through the hand, all before the cops come and get an opening movie title card. Now, at this point in the movie, we think, oh man, we're ready for that General Ortega reopening, because there is no reason to say that we'll survive all that, especially if the cops are trying to save us. Right? Well, apparently we just had a tough fucking hour to survive. And honestly, I would get into this, but unfortunately, this have another fake out. Then we get to this Sam and her boyfriend Richie. Richie is played by Huey from The Boys, and I wasn't a huge fan of him in this role. I mean, he's not a bad actor at all. You can tell he's ready for this kid. The problem is his character is very horribly and he's given some of the worst. And yeah, Sam's actress unfortunately isn't much better because almost everyone else in the cast laughs around her.
My dad isn't my dad.
This is kind of awkward right now.
My dad isn't my dad.
Anyways, this movie takes place in Hillsborough. Again, focuses on the high school teen cast. Again, we're introduced to Tara's friend group, which consists of characters Chad, Mindy, Wes, Amber, and this other girl whose name I completely forgot. And the movie doesn't mention this girl. Now, I actually remember most of the supporting cast members because I have a lot to say about them, because they are pretty much well-known for anything. And yeah, all of these actors are fine, but the dialogue that they're giving is just so funny. It just really gives off that modern Canadian Netflix style of acting, isolation, like doing it. But shit, as terrible as that show is, at least it's somewhat way better than this piece of shit. Anyways, this movie's main concept is based on prequels. Yes, I could see sequels, but honestly, prequels rolls off the tongue just a little bit better. Now I'm gonna play some Queen 5 here, the extremely gun
So, are you telling me that I'm caught in the middle of
and usually has some actors it brings back the lead and porno agents and set movies and even sometimes a similar premise with the first movie. But they're also joined by new characters who are either directly related to these films or whose own characters entirely have no connection, but are either obsessed with the character's past or know nothing about it. So the movie can have an exclusive character's history to tickle the audience. So basically, in summary, she's a 60-year-old walking around sets from 30 years ago and doing the same thing they did over 30 years ago. Try to win the audience over and play flashed her shit all the time. Now, as you can probably tell, I really do not like prequels or just nostalgia pandering content in general. And I could go hours and hours on my like that. But honestly, this video is already long enough and we have so much more to talk about this video. It's so jarring that this movie touched me prequels and fans. Technically, we've already done the boys thing. I mean, I guess prequels and way more
Modern just get sacked to rules the originals. So reverse
they already did it.
In fact, you're surefire to survive a modern horror movie.
Anyways, it seems like the killer in Scream 5 plans to make a requel to the original Scream movie. The cast of characters being connected to the original. The twins are mixed with earlier and recent references to Landon, which, I mean, sure, whatever I guess. And also one of the guys killed earlier was related to Steve Martin. But the big one and the thing that made me audibly gasp and roll my eyes is because I have a sweet reveal is the reveal that Sam is Billy Lewis. I mean, seriously, what kind of fucking fantasy shit are we even talking about here? You mean to tell me that the guy that had a face after heading out to school for don't believe I mean, just ignoring the fact that it doesn't even make sense with the original Scream movie timeline is already a big this movie, they really say that he was almost a drug and that's how he found out, but you mean to tell me that other people in Woodsboro were able to find out the truth about how his gang was bad was, but his own sister wasn't able to? I mean, shit, even Drake was having a secret daughter, but you need to tell me if the serial killer guy was famous enough to be and no one was able to find out about his secret past, even his own secret lover didn't reveal who she really was without or anything like that. Also, Sam Jones, like, you know, worked down in either of these movies, but whatever. This twist adds almost nothing to the story. Outside of seeing very creepy, luminous ghosts, scare scenes, honestly can't really go wrong with that. I mean, the CGI is pretty good. This movie just really screams that they're running out of ideas and really don't feel like it has anything to offer for the franchise. I mean, even just going to the movie really is set up poorly compared to other previous movies. I already mentioned that the meta commentary has become extremely over the top in terms of its point and this movie just really absolutely destroys the fourth wall because it doesn't even feel like a real character is talking. These scenes just feel like the directing blood and letting the audience know what's happening. In the first Scream movie, the movie is set already, even kind of the third one and the fourth one, the exposition scene wasn't just overly top to get all of the characters in one single room because that makes sense, and then have a character explain to the audience, I mean, the characters, they're in a movie, this is a movie, this is what happens in a movie, movies, the main movies, this is a movie, this is a movie. Hey guys, I don't think you can tell yet, but this is a movie. This is a stab movie. This is a stab movie. The movie Scream. You like the movie Scream, right? Well, this movie likes the movie Scream. The Scream is so great. The Scream is so great. Just ignore how terrible this movie is. The original Scream is way out of line. It's so great. Even if Scream 4 was a nostalgia-based prequel, at least it introduces the characters back more casually. It just feels like it's one of their new adventures. In this movie, they edit their introductions for applause, and the marketing campaign was very lenient on, hey, look at what 51 can drag back on set this year. Oh yeah, remember how I said that the original Scream was kind of inspired by like the third and fourth movie? Well, to say that they have any scene at all they don't even feel like characters anymore. Just scenes being dragged around to build comedic intent and say the same things and reference things that happened like 30 years ago. Anyways, I guess I haven't talked about Sydney yet because I expected listeners to like the movie, but now she's the mother guy.
Get that camera out of here.
Considering the fact that
I shoot the angels from the skies, clip their wings and watch them die.
Oh, and this movie was so stupid.
Please sit and check the press articles I have a good.
Drinking blood on the first day,
Because
we
no
can never
scene,
separate,
you
wanting
literally
him the
never
night
use them.
before.
I mean, sure you had it, because this movie throughout the franchise is very fast because for some reason they don't Dale was also back in the same show. You know, the actors got the dance together. Doing this for the recall trope of old, sad, terrible characters that have to come out of retirement to do the same old shit, explain to new generation of characters all the wonderful adventures that is going on in I will apologize for having the balance of Nick Colossus and the main original trio, but the thing is, playing times is so stupid because not only is the track of values other characters aside from the playing voice in the next movie, but he just comes out like such a big facade. Like, you mean to tell me he didn't think to shoot the killer in the head this time when he walks really slowly and unleashes all of his bullets, and then gets distracted by a fucking phone? Oh my god, dude, you just have to be better than that. I mean, I know it's a Scream 1 family talking about it, really is the thing. You go out and I mean, you need to tell me how all these other Anyways, one of the best scenes, I will say that the pretty good, and I also like that they showed off his ability. Wait a minute, apparently this movie says that his mind is a crazy board, so the character on the movie, which means that he has to have been Stab 8, which means that Stab 8 has to be a new adaptation of Killing 4. But hold on, we're just not even done yet. The big deal that's going on in this movie is that people are hiring so fucking bad at most importantly, it's implied that Sydney was in every single movie besides Stab 8.
Sydney's in every movie but the last one. Question.
But in Scream 4, they say that after Stab 3, they pivoted away from Sydney because he's threatening to act. Anyways, I guess it's time to talk about the characters end up going to a party just like in the original Scream, but just to make it even more like the original, it's actually in Stu Harper's house, which I guess nobody recognizes. It looks to be like a famous location or whatever. I mean, you need to tell me that Chad and Mindy are such big staff and have such a staff to make the fact that literally lives in Stu Harper's house. Anyways, it's revealed that surprisingly, Amber is recording, and honestly, this reveal scene looks kind of good. She really ruins it by this awful story. And yeah, basically Linda being chased around by Amber, but apparently she stopped getting a good shot because Sam and Tara son of them escaped. Now I guess we should talk about the second thing, which I will be distributing the second point of things because initially I do think this reveal was pretty shocking and I didn't see it coming. And I think it was foreshadowed well. We've seen earlier that Richard and Amber to get the shot from each other, but they act really awkward about it and even accuse each other. And Richie, the entire movie, is pretty much a sad movie. And talking about the sad movie things that but while I was watching some of the footage for this movie, I remember this line that Dewey tracked pretty early on that pretty much paints the entire reveal for me.
Rule number 1, never trust the love interest.
I mean, what the fuck do you mean never trust a love interest? Literally every movie after the first one has a love interest that's obviously a red herring. I mean, I know what they're implying, Billy Williams was a boyfriend in the original movie, but that was only the original movie. I mean, do you remember that they made 3 more movies after it where the killer was not the love interest? But no, according to this movie, those movies suck, which, I mean, I guess they do, but look who the fuck's talking. Also, I will say it's kind of a cheat because Richie is pretty much by Sam's side the entire movie. But Scream 6 does kind of address this and implies that Amber pretty much did all the killing, which, I mean, I guess was expected. But even with the killer reveal being so unsatisfying, the thing that really sold how terrible this whole movie was to me is the killer's motivation. Oh my god. First of all, this scene in general, like all the other killer reveal scenes at this point, are so corny. Why do the killers need to explain everything? But the thing that makes this so much worse is that I don't think the writers or the characters knew what exactly the killer's goal was, and what they wanted to accomplish after this big reveal scene. Remember how I mentioned in the universe how Stab 8 was hated and pretty much everyone thought it ruined the whole franchise? Well, Richie and his underage girlfriend Amber were apparently big Stab movie fans and even meditated on the Stab subreddit. But basically the whole thing is around is that they want to make their own version of Stab 8. And you know, saying this means like, okay, they're going to study for film and make their own little film and maybe just write a screenplay on Reddit. But no, what they want to do is take the real characters that the movies are based on and kill them, but make their own storyline into Stab 8 and give them new existing material to work off of. And first of all, yes, I know this is obviously referencing The Last Jedi and the outrage that that movie sparked. And you know, Star Wars fans are crazy, but even I find it hard to believe how they would want to kill the people that the movie was based on so that they can make their own movie. And yes, I know that Billy and Stu were obviously big, crazy movie fans, but the thing is, even the writers of that movie knew that them being big movie fans wasn't the only thing that they could base this motivation on. They gave a genuine reason for why Billy would want to kill Sam because her mom thinks it's bad. But this time, like Mickey and Scream 2, they are literally blaming it on the movie. I mean, Richie and Amber don't have any other motivation besides they didn't like the Stab movie. So for some reason they think they should make the daughter of Billy Loomis the recurring killer in the future Stab movie. But if that's the case, what's the point of even telling Sam who you are and revealing yourself to her? If you want to frame her for all this somehow, just kill Sydney and Gail. Better yet, why is Sydney and Gail even here in the first place? I mean, yeah, I know they want to bring back the legacy character pictures and blah blah blah. Except the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis literally isn't in half the Halloween movies or whatever. And yeah, this scene is just so bad. Like, there's so many terrible lines. It's over the top, beautiful performance thing. It's just getting way too over the top. And the I love and know her. Oh my god, Amber's just so corny in this movie. Like, I know she's doing a good job, but she is giving some of these worst dialogue of all time. I really can't take this scene seriously at all.
Run of the mill scene. Because our movie has fucking space.
And yeah, if it wasn't already obvious about this being set in Cindy Mauper's house in the kitchen, they really wanted to recapture the magic of Billy and Stu. But Billy and Stu were funny, but they were also crazy. They were scary. When I'm watching the reveal scene in the original Scream movie, I'm scared for Sydney because I'm watching this poor innocent girl being held captive by her boyfriend and her best friend, who are absolutely insane psychopaths. I'm sorry, but Reddit movie serial killers aren't really interesting or scary to me. It's laughably bad, just like this whole movie in general. Anyway, let's read through this. I'm just so fucking done with this movie. Sam and Sydney and Gail will eventually overpower Ricky and Amber, both I see with all their problems, and they end up going to together. And then Amber comes back for one final scare where she was burned to death but somehow still survived. Oh, and I forgot to fucking mention the scene where Jared beats Amber to death with crutches. Yeah, the character who couldn't watch the whole fucking movie apparently is able to move just enough to where she beats Detroit. What the fuck is this? Oh, and her last line.
Still prefer the pepper.
I mean, it just speaks for itself. Oh, and I forgot to mention Chad and Lindy who after that, ends up in a hospital bed towards the end of the movie. Just yet again, sure hope this is the last time that happens. And if it wasn't already obvious enough, this movie ends on the exact same shot that the first movie ended on. Because we sure do love nostalgia.
Terrifying, peaceful.
Honestly, I don't even care anymore. I don't really have much else to say about this movie. It's just cringeworthy, over the top nostalgia that makes no sense. It's just filled with god awful acting and just a really great dumb story in general. Seriously, when I watched this movie, I honestly just lost all faith in this franchise. And it really just broke the part of me. The part of me that just really loved the original movie. And just seeing a movie that claims to be nostalgic about that movie, but actually shits all over it, just really kind of broke a part of me. But whatever, we have one movie left, so let's just get this over with.
The phone is ringing.
Alright, let's just do this one last time. I will say that I have more positive things to say about Scream 6 than Scream 5 because it is a much better film. However, the bar for Scream 5 was so low that unfortunately Scream 6 has a lot of its own problems and isn't really a very good film in its own right. But while we're on the topic of positives, I will say that the opening scene in this movie is actually really good, and I'd even go as far to say it's the best opening scene outside of the first movie. But like most positive things I have to say about this movie, I have to put an asterisk next to it because, yeah, there are some problems with this opening scene that affects the plot later on, but I will get deeper into that. But the scene itself is really great. First of all, the decision to kill off Samara Weaving and marking her off as someone important in this film was actually pretty clever given what they did with Drew Barrymore back in the first movie. Also, I just have to say, Ready or Not 2 looks so good, like I'm so excited for that movie. But anyways, we see her get killed off, and instead of jumping straight to the title card, we actually see Ghostface unmasked. And for the first half of the movie, I thought, oh, we're actually going to be following Ghostface this time around, and we're going to know who it is the whole time. We even see Tara walk by later from his perspective. But then once we get back to his apartment, we find out there's actually another Ghostface who calls him, ends up brutally killing him, and then that Ghostface is going to be our real Ghostface we're trying to unmask for the whole movie. I will say that while the scene is set up very well, I do wish this idea was actually explored upon for like the entire movie. It just feels like a much more interesting idea than what we actually ended up getting, but we're not getting too deep into that right now. I think the action scenes are way more memorable this time around because Scream 5 had some pretty boring attack scenes. I really like the bodega scene, and I actually really like Ghostface using a shotgun. It's a nice change of pace. I like the apartment scene, and I like the scene on the subway, and yeah, like I said, a lot of these movies have a lot of good things to them. This movie specifically has things that it does way better than Scream 5. However, like I said, I need to put an asterisk next to all those good things I just mentioned, because all of those things have one big glaring issue with them. You see, in almost every Scream movie, everything that makes them part about it that makes it scary is that pretty much all their friends almost nobody dies. Like Ghostface, there's a scene where we see two Ghostface killers
tag team Chad, right? And he's literally bleeding out of his mouth. His lungs should be more than fractured right now. And then we see him in a hospital bed towards the end of the movie and he's suddenly fine.
Please.
And yes, this movie has not one, not two, not three, but four, technically 5 fake out deaths. It is more than beyond me how this movie was just allergic to having any sort of serious kill count. Seriously, we're 6 movies into this shit and almost nobody significant dies. Oh no, I forgot to mention that Sam's therapist and Mindy's girlfriend are like the only 2 significant characters, and that's putting a quotation around them, that actually died. I mean, say what you will about the Craven films, but at least bodies hit the floor. Between Scream 5 and especially Scream 6, it feels like they're just allergic to actually killing off any of the characters and having any sort of stakes, even if these characters are all pretty boring. They're really trying to make Chad, Mindy, Sam, and Tara the new core 4, and I'm sorry, it just feels so forced, like just they're trying to force some sort of hashtag or fan art or fans to obsess over this group, and it's just not working. The thing is, people naturally like Sid, Gale, and Dewey back in the original film, and all 3 of those characters were kind of doing their own thing. They didn't force them to be together and be like, we are the main 3 or we are the original trio. Gale is back in this movie, and yeah, she doesn't really do much. It just seems like Courtney Cox just wanted to visit set for a week and they just threw in some scenes for her to film. I feel like they really wanted to kill her off because they do give her a pretty cool action scene that very much implies that this is going to be the end for Gale's character. But then after this big emotional seemingly death scene, they reveal like almost 2 seconds later that she still has a pulse and that she's still alive. Oh, and also Kirby, I guess, from Scream 4 is back this time around. I don't really know why. I mean, yeah, it definitely seemed like she died in Scream 4, and I guess they needed another legacy character because Sydney didn't come back in this one, so I guess she fills that role. She doesn't really have much of a character in this movie, not that she had that much in Scream 4 to begin with, and apparently she works for the FBI? Like, what are we even doing here anymore? All these characters just talk the same and are just here for big meta exposition dump. Oh, and speaking of that, this movie doesn't really have that much meta commentary, which should really show you how rushed this film was, especially since it came out so quick after the last movie. I was really hoping this time around they would address the nature of true crime culture and how that's become more popular in recent days. I mean, there's a show on Peacock that sadly got canceled called Based on a True Story, and it's pretty much this, but if it was good. But no, according to Mindy, the movie that they're in is a franchise. Like, yeah, the other 5 movies kind of already proved that. Oh, and the funny thing is almost all of her rules end up being completely wrong. There isn't a bigger body count because almost every character that has a death ends up being alive. The same exact thing that happened in Scream 2 happens again in Scream 6. And the legacy characters that she claims are expendable both end up surviving in this movie, and both have a fake out death on top of that. Like, seriously, what are the point of these scenes anymore? Can we please just kill off Mindy? Like, why is this series just allergic to killing this character off? Nobody likes this character, and if you do, you're lying to yourself. She is not Randy, and she will never be Randy. I don't think this movie even utilizes the New York setting that well at all. I mean, we have scenes in a bodega, in a subway, an apartment, and a random park. You know, these are locations that exist in almost any city. Like, you could have had this exact same movie be in Los Angeles or Chicago or even Atlanta. I don't know, we've been doing this for like 6 movies now, and I'm just kind of tired of them doing the same exact shit over and over. And yeah, they kept marking this movie like the new city was gonna make any sort of difference on the plot, but it still ends up being most of the same shit we're already used to. I guess the biggest things that's different about this movie is that instead of 2 killers, we have 3 killers, and yeah, we're gonna just jump straight to the 3rd act because I'm so over with this. So throughout the movie, at all the crime scenes, the killer is leaving down the mask of one of the previous movie's killers because I guess they finally acknowledge that the sequels exist. Yeah, take that, Scream 5. But clearly it's all leading back to Billy Loomis, hinting at that the killer may be someone from one of the previous movies, and they even suggest that it might be Kirby. But at this point, who the killer was pretty obvious off a process of elimination once again. I mean, 6 of the characters in the movie were returning characters, and I know that the screenwriters don't have the guts to make a returning person be the killer this time around. So the killer is this cop guy from earlier in the movie who's been helping them with the investigation. But not only him, it's this other guy, Ethan, who's his son, who was pretty obvious that he was a killer. I mean, his whole personality the entire movie is, this guy is definitely Ghostface, this guy is Ghostface. Guys, I think this guy might be the killer. But the real big reveal is that Quinn, one of Sam's roommates from earlier, was actually the 3rd killer and Ethan's sister. And I'm sorry, this is just so beyond a cheat, Because what do you mean? You show a character's death and imply that they're dead for the entire movie and then just reveal that it was a fake body the whole time in the third act? The whole point of the Scream movies is that there's supposed to be clues throughout the movie that one of the suspects that we see throughout the movie might be the killer. Key word, throughout the movie, meaning the character should have presence throughout the movie. And yes, I know people will bring up Roman Bridger in Scream 3 or even Billy in Scream 1, but the difference is that both of their fake out deaths were only like 10 minutes before the reveal. Quinn gets killed off like 30 minutes into the movie and doesn't get revealed to like the last 15 minutes. This is just obviously a cheat so we can have someone running around killing people as Ghostface while the other two obvious suspects are accounted for. But the thing that for me really sold this terrible reveal was the fact that all three of them were doing this as a family, and better yet, that they're Richie's family, the boyfriend from the last movie. Guys, we literally just did this exact same movie. It's called Scream 2. I mean, we even had their climax taking place in the theater. And speaking of that, why does this theater mostly have props that seem like they would exist in real life and not be from the Stab movie franchise, or I guess evidence that the police suddenly just didn't know were missing all this time? Like, it makes sense for a real life Scream movie fan to have all of these props, but an in-universe Stab movie fan, wouldn't they have more props through all the made-up weird Stab shit that they release later on? I mean, where's the DeLorean from the Stab 5 time travel movie? Anyways, Richie's family's mad that their serial killer son was killed by Sam, so they become serial killers, and they decide that they want to kill Sam, but not just kill her, they want to frame her wearing her father's mask. Now, there's just already so many problems with the scene. Like, first of all, how do you have 3 different killers, but you keep letting them get out of sight? I mean, at one point, I'm pretty sure the cop literally looks around and doesn't even face towards Sam or Tara. And Ethan and Quinn are both social distancing their knives away from Sam and Tara, I guess not to piss off the intimacy coordinators. And look, while I really don't like the killer's performances in these scenes for the most part, I will say that it's not on the fault of the actors, because the cop specifically was in a few seasons of Shameless, and I rewatched it recently, and I'm just really falling in love with his performance and his portrayal of such a struggling addict. But here he's just like a straight up Scooby-Doo villain. Anyways, the killers for some reason decide to tell Sam and Tara almost every detail of their plan. And I mean every single detail.
Stop Gail Weathers. Stop Lindy on the train.
Who do you think started the rumors about you in the first place?
What, there's an mask? He'll say some poor dumb bastard read on the internet. They hear the real Ghostface and took matters into their own deluded hands.
We had to kill those 2 wannabe film students. What do anything to do with the death of my son? Suffers and dies. Yeah, they do.
Oh, and that last line particularly is pretty funny, because everyone who has anything to do with the death of my son should die is really funny, considering that your big, strong, 6'5" muscular ass didn't kill a single person in the entire movie. He even says they need to rush over to the hospital to make sure that Mindy and Gail don't pull through. You wouldn't have to worry about them pulling through at the hospital if you just stab them through the head. Like I said earlier, it's not that hard to kill somebody. And if their whole thing is that they want to frame Sam, what's the point of them telling her anything? Remember how I mentioned that the opening scene would kind of destroy the movie's plot? If the idea is they want to frame Sam for all of this, why don't they just stage it like it's a real crime scene? Or if they didn't really want to frame Sam for some reason, just really wanted her to die in her father's mask for some weird poetic reason, whatever, then just frame the guys from earlier that you already know are copycat Ghostfaces, and just put the theater in their name, which you already did, and kidnap them, and just leave them at the scene of the crime after you already killed Sam. I mean, Billy and Stu were smart enough to think about this in the first movie. And yes, I know horror movies are dumb. Things don't always make sense in movies in general, and I don't expect every movie to make sense logically, but when the movie doesn't offer me much else to enjoy, and it's dumb, and it doesn't make sense, and the killers are not only unsatisfying but retreading shit that we've already done, I'm just beyond over it at this point. I don't really find any more saving grace in this franchise. And look, I don't even care to mention what happens at the climax, because we already know how it goes at this point. They're gonna drop a few corny one-liners, and then Sam does the exact same thing that Sidney does in the first movie, because hey, do you remember Scream 1996? Remember when these movies were good and charming and actually made sense and were scary and entertaining? Sam drops Billy's mask on the floor and walks away with her boyfriend who did nothing the entire movie, and then the movie finally ends and I can finally stop talking about these movies. Yeah, in summary, I've really just fallen out of love with the Scream franchise. The thing that really hurts me about it is because, like I said in the beginning of the video, I don't like to be negative, and I don't really think that these films are all that bad. I mean, certainly compared to a lot of other shit, like the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, or even Halloween sequels, these movies definitely stand out and are way better in quality. Besides Scream 5, I mean, that's a little bit debatable. But the thing that the Chucky and the Halloween and the Friday the 13th franchise all have in common is that those movies got weird as fuck and were able to experiment with their formula. Even in the case of Halloween and Chucky, they were able to pivot away from their main lead. And when we did see Andy return in later Chucky movies or Laurie return in the later Halloween movies, it was after we had some time away from the characters, so it felt like a warming welcome. I don't feel anything about Sidney Prescott returning in Scream 7 because we literally just got her in the movie less than 4 years ago. And the reason why she sat out of Scream 6 wasn't for creative reasons or anything like that. It was because the studio didn't pay her enough to return in this piece of shit. And I don't know, eventually once you watch all these films back to back to back, you just get really tired of the over-exposition, meta-explanation, blah blah blah, fourth wall break bullshit, and the corny dialogue and the terrible acting. You can really just start to see where these movies start to lose their charm. It becomes formulaic cookie-cutter stories that do the same exact thing over and over again. In every single movie, the killer is either a love interest or a family member, and they either want revenge or they want clout. And in case you haven't seen the original Scream movie, you could probably watch any of the sequels without seeing it, because almost every single movie has something that's going back to the original or referencing the original. And I know people will try to argue that Sam and Tara breathe new life into the franchise, but the main thing that's interesting about both of those characters is their relation to Billy Loomis. And the thing is, it's not even like Scream 5 and 6 even start off a new chapter, because all it does is just reference the original movies over and over again, and continues the same story with most of the same supporting cast returning. It's the same shit with the same characters and the same action scenes, but it's so much worse and lost all of its charm and forgot everything that made the original film so special. Scream as a concept being a satirical take on slasher movies shouldn't have even been this big movie franchise to begin with, because it kind of just makes it lose all of its spark. And what it's really trying to talk about in the film is lost upon me once you remember that there's 6 other movies after it that get progressively worse and worse. And the other big slasher franchises actually do shit and aren't just stuck to one formula over and over again. Michael Myers goes on a road trip, Chucky ends up having a wife and kids. I mean, don't get me started on Jason's ass. He went to space, he went to even went to hell, and he even fought Freddy Krueger. Meanwhile, it took us 6 movies to come up with the genius idea of what if instead of 2 killers, there were 3 killers, and then the motivation is something that we did 5 movies ago. And the meta angle was used so much more interesting in the first 2 movies, but now by Scream 6, it's just the characters breaking the fourth wall going, this is a movie, this is what's going to happen in the movie, this movie is dumb, this is a movie. Hey, have you ever seen the movie Stab? I think the issue is mainly these films, outside of the first movie, you can really just watch any of the sequels from there, and most of the context will kind of be filled in. I mean, I think Scream 4 makes only like 2 references to the other 2 movies. It's not really meant to be binge watched back to back to back, because then you really start to get how repetitive and dumber these movies start to get as they go on. They're made for you to watch one day, and 2 months later you watch another one, and then you see the new one whenever it comes out in theaters. It's not a big series like Star Wars with its expertly told story that you're supposed to watch from beginning to end. You can really just bounce around after you watch the first movie and still get pretty much most of what's going on. If you ask me some ideas that can make these movies just a bit more entertaining, I think they really need to just experiment a bit more and just drop the usual formula they've been doing for almost 30 years now. Look, this video ended up being way longer than I expected it to, and I'm tired and I think my point has been made across, so let's just wrap this up. If you want to know my ranking of the movies, I ranked them like 5, 3, 6, 4, 2, and 1. And yeah, I guess if you want to know my thoughts on Scream 7, because by the time this video is out, it's going to be out, and I haven't seen it at the time of recording it, but I'm sure it's great. Oh, and if you want me to talk about the Scream TV series, yeah, fuck no. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching if you stuck around this long. I know the editing was probably a bit rusty, but give me a break, it's been literally years since I've done this. I have some other projects in the works. Right now there's a video on the Life is Strange series and me playing all their games for the first time, but then they announced that they're making another game when I came up with the idea for the video, so now I have to wait for that game to come out and beat it and then do all of that, yada yada. I also want to make a video on Shameless. I'm debating on what exactly it's going to be, but that should be coming out sometime this summer. I also want to make a video on James Gunn's Superman movie, which unfortunately won't be a very positive video. And lastly, there's a video on The Boys that I may make or I may not make, depending on if I've had the time or the effort or energy to do so. Lastly, there's something I wanted to do before these videos end, and I want to do these things where I recommend you some content, whether it's movies, shows, games, music, or even just activities to do with friends. I haven't been watching a whole lot of movies recently because I've just been so busy, But if you want some recommendations, Kamikaze Girls is one of my all-time favorites, and I think a lot of people would really love it. As well as the new Sam Raimi movie that just came out, I thought it was pretty good, and I would watch it again. In terms of TV shows, I have been rewatching a lot of Smallville and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so if you haven't watched those shows, I would give them both a watch. They're pretty good. I also haven't been really playing a lot of games recently, unless you want to count me playing as Chaperone on Fortnite. But I did play this game called Indica a few months ago, and I thought it was actually pretty good, although it is really weird and the story structure is interesting, to say the least. There's new music from Mitski, Soila, and A$AP Rocky that also have to be good, and you should listen to all of it. And lastly, for activities to do with friends, I heard kayaking is pretty fun. If you live near a lake, you should do it. I don't know. Anyways, that's enough scream for a while. And in the words of Mindy herself,